He wasn't supposed to touch her like that, and she was never supposed to let him. But one night changed everything, and now there's a secret in his drawer, a secret in her bag, and a marriage built on beautiful lies finally running out of time. Chemistry doesn't ask for permission. And this baby, nobody saw it coming. If you're already hooked, hit that like button, drop a comments, and subscribe because this story is just getting started. Let's go. She found it on a Tuesday, which felt wrong. Discoveries like that should happen during storms, or at least on a Friday when the week already feels like it's collapsing. But no, it was a Tuesday, 11:14 in the morning, the office humming its usual indifferent hum, the coffee in her mug still warm, and Serena Vale was reaching into the wrong drawer for a stapler. She never found when her fingers closed around a folded piece of paper that had no business being in Marcus Hale's private office cabinet. She should have put it back. She knew. She should have put it back. She'd only come in to leave the quarterly projections on his desk. He was in a board meeting. Until noon, the building was half empty, and the stapler in her own office had jammed for the third time that week. Small logistics, routine. The kind of Tuesday morning that doesn't change anything, except she didn't put it back. The paper was folded in thirds, the way people fold things they intend to file and never look at again. Medical letterhead. She recognized the hospital logo. St. Aurelius, the private clinic on Meridian Street, where people with Marcus Hale's kind of money went when they wanted discretion with their diagnosis. Her eyes moved before her conscience could intervene. One line. That was all it took. One clinical, bloodless, bureaucratic line that rearranged everything she thought she understood about the last 4 months of her life. Azoospermia, severe, non-obstructive, prognosis, permanent, fertility, not viable. Serena stood very still. The office around her continued existing. The hum of the HVAC, the faint sound of traffic 40 floors below, the way the late morning light moved across Marcus's desk, in that particular way it did, between 11 and noon, turning the mahogany almost amber. She had noticed that light before. She had stood in exactly this spot before, 3 months ago on a Thursday afternoon, when he had asked her to stay after everyone else left and the city outside had gone quietly dark, and everything between them had shifted without either of them deciding to let it. She folded the paper back exactly as she'd found it, placed it in the drawer, closed the drawer, picked up the quarterly projections from her folder, and set them on his desk, aligned with the edge, the way he preferred. Then she walked out, pulled the heavy glass door shut behind her, and stood in the corridor for a moment, with her hand still on the handle and her heart doing something she didn't have a name for yet. In her bag, against her hip, was her own folded piece of paper, also from a clinic, also the kind of thing that changes a Tuesday into something you carry for the rest of your life. She hadn't told anyone. She'd been deciding how to tell him, turning the words over for 2 weeks, testing them in the mirror at 6 in the morning, discarding every version as either too clinical, or too soft, or too much. Like a woman asking for something she wasn't sure she deserved. Now the words had dissolved entirely. Because if that document in his drawer said what she knew it said, and she had a first-class honors degree in being precise about what words mean, then the conversation she'd been rehearsing was no longer just difficult. It was something else entirely. Something she didn't have a category for yet. She walked back to her office, sat down, opened her laptop, stared at the quarterly projections, document on her screen without reading a single number. Marcus Hale could not father a child. She was carrying one. The math was doing something very loud in her chest. She had not meant for any of it to happen. That much she could say honestly, and she valued honesty above most things. She had worked at Hale Industries for 3 years, before Marcus Hale became something other than a name above a door. He was the kind of man who occupied a room without trying, not through loudness or performance, but through a specific quality of stillness, like a fixed point that everything else organized itself around. She had found him professionally compelling and personally irrelevant, and had been perfectly satisfied with that arrangement. Then came the Henderson account restructuring. 6 weeks of late nights, the two of them, and numbers, and bad takeout coffee, and the particular intimacy that builds between people solving hard problems together in empty buildings. She had seen him frustrated, and then focused, and then quietly exhilarated. when the solution came together. He had seen her take apart a flawed financial model in 11 minutes and rebuild it from the inside out. Something had shifted. She had told herself it was mutual respect. She had been lying to herself with impressive commitment for approximately 4 months. And then one Thursday, the city went dark, and he had said her name in a way that didn't sound like her name had ever sounded before. And she had made a decision she couldn't unmake. She wasn't sorry. That was the part she kept turning over now, sitting at her desk with the blank projections and the very loud math. She wasn't sorry it had happened. She was terrified of what it meant, and furious at the complication, and desperately uncertain about almost everything. But underneath all of that, in the place she was most honest with herself, she wasn't sorry, which made the thing in his drawer so much worse. Her phone lit up on the desk. A calendar notification. Board debrief. MH plus S Vale. 1 TPM. 1 hour and 46 minutes, until she had to sit across a table from Marcus Hale and pretend her face didn't know anything. Serena Vale had a first-class honors degree and 3 years of navigating corporate rooms where everyone was pretending something. She was good at this. She was very good at this. She looked at her phone. She looked at her bag. She thought about the paper inside it, and the paper in his drawer, and the precise, brutal distance between those two documents. And for the first time in a very long time, Serena Vale had absolutely no idea what she was going to do. She found the man's entire medical secret while looking for a stapler. Not snooping, not suspicious, a stapler. And instead of putting it back like a reasonable adult and going about her, Tuesday she read it, processed it, and walked out of that office carrying 2 life-changing secrets in one body. My personal opinion. She should have put that paper back, booked a doctor's appointment, and had the conversation with Marcus before touching anything in that drawer. I want to know what you think. Was Serena wrong for reading that document? Or would you have done exactly the same thing in her position? Drop your verdict in the comments. Marcus Hale had learned to read rooms the way other people read faces. It was a survival skill acquired early. Growing up as the only son of Ruth Hale meant that the temperature of a room was always more informative than anything anyone said out loud. By the time he was 12, he could tell the difference between a silence that meant everything was fine and a silence that meant something was already broken and nobody had found the pieces yet. He walked into the 1 o'clock debrief and found the second kind. Serena was already seated, laptop open, a pen moving between her fingers in that particular rhythm she had when she was thinking hard about something she wasn't going to say. The other 2 analysts flanking her were talking about the Henderson follow-up, something about Q4 projections, words that Marcus processed automatically while his attention settled on Serena the way it always did now, quietly, without his full permission. She looked up when he entered, met his eyes for exactly the right amount of time, looked back at her screen. Nothing in her face, not a flicker. He sat down, opened his folder, said the things a man in his position says at the beginning of a debrief. The meeting moved forward. The way meetings do, efficiently, professionally, the way everything between them had always been until it wasn't anymore. She presented the projections. Her voice was steady, precise. The cadence he associated with her best work, that particular quality of controlled intelligence that had made him trust her judgment before he trusted anything else about her. She didn't look at him more than necessary. She didn't look at him less than necessary either. She was performing normalcy with the skill of someone who had been rehearsing it since before he arrived. He had spent enough time studying her to know the difference between Serena at ease and Serena under extraordinary internal pressure, producing a flawless external performance. This was the second one. After the analysts left, he waited. He was good at waiting, another skill from the Ruth Hale School of Strategic Patience. He closed his folder and watched her gather her things with slightly more deliberateness than the task required. "You went into my office this morning," he said. Not an accusation, a fact delivered quietly. Her hands paused for 1/2 second over her laptop, then continued. "I left the projections on your desk. Helen said you needed them before the board meeting." "I know." He watched her. "I'm not asking why you went in. She looked up then, those honey-green eyes, the left one, catching the afternoon light, the way it always did, asymmetrical and distracting. Something moved through her expression, fast, controlled, gone. Then, what are you asking? He wasn't entirely sure. That was the honest answer, and Marcus Hale had a complicated relationship with honest answers. He had built the last 8 years of his life on a careful architecture of things he didn't say, to his mother, to his wife, and most recently and most devastatingly, to himself. Nothing, he said. Good work on the projections. She nodded once, picked up her bag. The bag, he noticed her hand close around the strap in a particular way, like it contained something fragile, or something she wasn't ready to put down. Serena. She stopped at the door. He wanted to say something real. He could feel it pressing against the back of his teeth, some true thing about the last 4 months, about the Thursday, when the city went dark, about the fact that he had spent 38 years being excellent at control, and she had dismantled it so quietly. He hadn't noticed until it was already gone. He wanted to say that Diana knew something was wrong, had known for months, and that their marriage had been a dignified performance for so long. Neither of them remembered what it was performing for. He wanted to say he hadn't been sleeping. He wanted to say her name, the way he'd said it that Thursday, and watch her face do what it had done then. He said none of it. Close the door on your way out, he said. I have a call at 2. Something crossed her face that he couldn't fully decode. Not hurt. She was too defended for hurt to reach the surface that quickly. Something more like a decision being made. Of course, she said, and left. He sat alone in the conference room for 4 minutes before his phone rang. It was Dr. Clement Osei. Marcus looked at the name on the screens and for a long moment before answering. Marcus. Clement's voice had that quality it always had, unhurried, like a man who had learned that bad news doesn't improve with speed. I wanted to check in. It's been 3 weeks since the results. I know that's a significant amount of information to process. I've processed it, Marcus said. A pause, the kind Clement was good at. Not empty, just patient. Have you spoken to Diana? No. Marcus, I'll handle it. Another pause. Outside the conference room windows, the city continued its afternoon business 40 floors below, indifferent and vast. Marcus watched a plane cross the sky between 2 buildings, slow and silent from this distance. There are options worth discussing, Clement said carefully. Adoption, donor conception. Some couples find that. Clement. His voice came out quieter than he intended. I said I'll handle it. He ended the call, sat for a moment with the phone face down on the table, and both hands flat on the surface, the way he did when he needed to feel something solid. He was sterile. Had been, according to Clement, likely since his early 20s. A condition that had hidden itself behind a marriage that stopped trying for children 3 years ago. When Diana said she needed more time, and he had accepted that, because accepting things was easier than examining them. 3 years of not examining it, and then 1 blood panel ordered for entirely unrelated reasons, and 1 phone call from Clement, and 1 word, azoospermia, delivered with such clinical gentleness that Marcus had sat in that office chair and understood, with perfect clarity, that a version of his future he hadn't known, he was still holding on to, had just quietly closed. He hadn't told anyone. Not Diana. Not his mother. Not a single person in the world knew except Clement and whatever filing system, St. Aurelius, used for documents that rearranged lives. He thought about the drawer in his office where he'd put the folded letter. He thought about Serena's hand on her bag strap. He thought about the way her eyes had moved when he said, I went into my office this morning. That half-second pause, precise and involuntary, the pause of someone who had found something they weren't supposed to find. Marcus Hale sat alone in the conference room and began, for the first time, to do the math. The answer that came back was impossible. He sat with it anyway. Marcus sat alone in that conference room, doing math that doesn't add up, figured out something enormous, and still looked Serena dead in the eyes and said, Close the door on your way out. Close the door. My honest opinion? This man is a coward wrapped in an expensive suit and a dead man's watch. And the frustrating part is, we still root for him, because the writers made him devastatingly self-aware about his own emotional failures. Classic move. But I need your take. Do you think Marcus already suspected Serena was carrying his child in that moment? Or was he genuinely still in the dark? Tell me what you think. Serena told Priya on a Wednesday morning in the third-floor bathroom, which was the only room in Hale Industries that didn't have cameras and where the ventilation system was loud enough to swallow a conversation whole. She hadn't planned to tell anyone. She had planned to continue being extremely competent and internally catastrophic until some better option presented itself, which was a strategy she had successfully deployed through most of her adult life. But Priya had looked at her across the open plan office at 9:15 with that particular expression, the one that meant, I already know something is wrong, and I will follow you into every room until you confirm it. And Serena had calculated the energy cost of continued denial and decided she didn't have enough left. She said it quickly, the way you remove a bandage. I'm pregnant. Priya's face did several things in rapid sequence. Then she reached out and gripped Serena's wrist with both hands. Okay, she said, okay. How far? 9 weeks. And the father is. Priya stopped, looked at her. The ventilation system hummed. Priya's eyes moved, almost imperceptibly, upward, toward the ceiling, toward the floor above them, toward the general direction of the executive level. Serena. Don't. Serena, I said don't. She pulled her wrist back gently. Looked at herself in the mirror above the sink. The woman, looking back at her, seemed improbably composed for someone whose life was currently structured, like a building with the foundation pulled out. There's something else. She told her about the drawer, the letterhead, the single line. Priya listened without interrupting, which was not her natural state, and indicated the severity of what she was hearing. When Serena finished, the bathroom was very quiet except for the ventilation. That's not possible, Priya said finally. That's what the document says is not possible. Yes. So then who? There's no one else. Serena met her own eyes in the mirror, said it clearly, because clarity was the only thing she had left to hold on to. There has been no one else for 7 months. Not since Joel and I ended, and Joel and I ended 8 months ago. Priya sat down on the edge of the counter. So, either the document is wrong, it's from St. Aurelius, Clement O.C. signed it, or you're wrong about there being no one else. I'm not wrong. Or, Priya paused. Or the document in his drawer isn't about him. Serena turned to look at her. She had not considered this. In 2 weeks of turning the problem over, she had not once considered this. And the fact that she hadn't told her something about the state she was in. How thoroughly the fear had narrowed her thinking. It was his office, his private cabinet, his name on. She stopped. Had his name been on it? She'd seen the hospital logo. She'd seen the diagnosis. Had she seen his name, or had she assumed his name, because the document was in his space, and her brain had connected the points with the most devastating possible line? She couldn't remember. The memory kept presenting her the words, zoospermia, permanent, not viable, and everything around those words had gone white. I need to see it again, she said. You can't go back into his office and... I know I can't. She picked up her bag. Her reflection in the mirror looked like someone who had made a decision. I'm going to tell him. Priya stood up fast. Tell him what exactly? Which part? All of it, Serena. He's married. He's he's 3 levels above you, on the org chart, which HR would like very much for you to remember. His mother owns 40% of this company. You cannot just walk into Marcus Hale's office and... I'm not going to walk into his office, Serena said. I'm going to ask him to meet me somewhere that isn't here. She was already typing on her phone. Brief. Professional on the surface, because she didn't know how else to write to him after yesterday's conference room and close the door on your way out. Can we talk? Not here. Tonight, if possible. It's important. She hit send before Priya could read it over her shoulder. The response came in 40 seconds. 7 o'clock, the Carver Building lobby. I'll be outside. Priya read it. Looked at Serena. He responded in 40 seconds. I know. That's not nothing. I know, Serena said, and picked up her bag and walked out before her composure could make any decisions without her. She arrived at the Carver Building at 6:58. He was already there. That was the thing about Marcus Hale, that she had stopped being surprised by, and started simply accepting. He was always already there. Not early in the aggressive way, Some men were early, using punctuality as a dominance display. Early in the way of someone for whom waiting was preferable to the anxiety of arrival. He was standing outside the lobby entrance, with his jacket over one arm, his shirt collar open, the vintage steel watch catching the last of the evening light. And he looked. She registered this before she could stop herself, like a man who had also been doing a lot of thinking since yesterday. "Thank you for coming," she said, because she needed to start somewhere. "You said it was important." "It is." They didn't go inside. By unspoken agreement, they walked. The block was quiet, a tree-lined stretch of older buildings. The developers hadn't reached yet, the city noise, one street over like weather. Behind glass. She had practiced this conversation. She had specific words in a specific order, and she had walked through it enough times that she trusted herself to get through it. Without her voice, doing anything embarrassing. She made it 4 sentences in before he stopped walking. "How far?" he said. She blinked. 9 weeks. He was quiet for a moment. She watched his face do the thing it rarely did, lose its composure. Not all at once, but in layers, like a controlled demolition, each floor giving way in sequence. 9 weeks, he repeated. "Marcus, and you're certain that I'm—" "Yes." No hesitation. It mattered to her that there was no hesitation. "Yes. I need you to know that with complete certainty." He looked at her for a long time. The evening moved around them. A couple walking a dog, a taxi passing, somewhere nearby, someone's window open with music. The ordinary world doing its ordinary thing. "I found your medical file," she said. "In your cabinet. I wasn't looking for it. I want to be clear about that. I went in for the projections and I—" She stopped. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth." "Asak, is it yours, the diagnosis, the document from St. Aurelius?" She held his gaze. "Is it your name on that file?" Something moved through his expression that she recognized finally as the specific pain of a secret that has been held alone for too long and has finally found air. "Yes," he said quietly. "It's mine." She nodded. She had known, but hearing it landed differently than knowing it. "Then I need you to understand," she said, and her voice stayed level because she needed it to. "That what I'm telling you is also true, and that those two things existing simultaneously means we have a problem that neither of us can explain yet. But I'm not lying to you. I have never lied to you." He looked at her for so long she could hear her own heartbeat. "I know you haven't," he said. The city moved around them. The dog walker had turned the corner. The music from the open window shifted to something slower. "There's something wrong with my results," he said. It wasn't defensive. It was the voice of a man building towards something, laying foundations. "Clement wants me to come back in for further testing," he said. "It's worth verifying before." He stopped, started again, before making any permanent conclusions. "When?" I pushed it off. He looked down at the sidewalk, then back at her. "I didn't want it to be wrong." She frowned slightly. "You didn't want. Why would you not want?" "Because if it's wrong," he said very quietly, "then everything I've accepted about myself in the last 3 weeks stops being something I've dealt with and becomes something I ran from." He looked at her, steadily. "And if it's wrong, and what you're telling me is true, then there's a conversation I have to have that I have been avoiding for 8 years. Serena understood then, not just the medical question, the whole architecture of what he meant. Diana. The marriage, the thing they had both been not saying since, before Serena Vale ever existed in his orbit. "Go back to Clement," she said. "Get the verification. And in the meantime, I'm going to be 9 weeks pregnant, and terrified, and going to work every day, and not telling anyone except Priya, who already knows, and is probably stress-eating at her desk as we speak." She said it with enough dry precision that something shifted in his face. Not quite a smile, but the place a smile comes from, and you're going to figure out what you're actually living, Marcus. Not what you've been managing, what you're actually living. He looked at her with an expression she had no prior reference for, open in a way she hadn't seen from him, unguarded in a way that cost him something. "I'll call Clement tomorrow," he said. "Good." They stood on the quiet street with the city behind them, and something large and unfinished between them, that neither of them tried to resolve that night, because some things need to be built properly, or not at all. She turned to go. His hand closed briefly around her wrist. not stopping her, just present. The way a person touches something real to confirm it's there. Then let go. She walked home. Her hand moved without thinking to the key pendant at her throat, held it for a moment, let it go. 3 days later, Diana Hale arrived at Hale Industries at 4 in the afternoon unannounced, which was something she had never done in 8 years of marriage, and asked Helen at reception to let her husband know she was waiting in the lobby. Helen called Marcus. Marcus said he'd be right down. Then he sat at his desk for 90 seconds, looking at a message on his phone that had arrived 20 minutes ago from Clement O'C's office. Mr. Hale, Dr. O'C has reviewed the repeat panel results and asks that you call at your earliest convenience. The initial results require significant revision. Significant revision. Marcus read it twice. Then he stood up, straightened his jacket, and went downstairs to meet his wife. Deanna was standing near the lobby window when he came out of the elevator. Her platinum hair, precise. Her posture, the architecture of a woman who had decided something before she arrived. She turned when she heard him. Her ice blue eyes moved over his face with the particular focus of someone who has been studying a specific person for 8 years and knows exactly what they're looking for. I need to talk to you, she said. Not here. Diana. Not here, Marcus. Her voice was quiet and final as a door closing. Tonight. Come home tonight, please. He looked at his wife, at the slight tremor in the please that she hadn't been able to control, at the thing moving behind her, composed expression that he recognized, because he had been carrying the same thing for months. Not anger. Something older, and more exhausted than anger. I'll be home by 7, he said. She nodded, turned, walked out through the lobby doors back into the afternoon with her posture perfect and her hands at her sides, pressed slightly too flat against her skirt. Marcus stood in the lobby for a moment. Behind him, the elevator opened, and he heard the particular rhythm of heels he knew. Serena, crossing toward the exit, stopping when she saw him, reading the situation in approximately 1 second, with those precise eyes. Their gazes met across the lobby. He thought about significant revision. He thought about tonight. Come home. He thought about a quiet street and a hand on a wrist, and go back to Clement. Serena gave him the smallest nod, the kind that means go, I know go. He went. Diana showed up unannounced after 8 years of. Announced everything stood in that lobby with perfect posture, and hands pressed flat against her skirt. And I want to be very clear, that woman knew something was wrong. Long before any of this. She chose not to look because looking meant deciding, and deciding meant dismantling the life she built. My opinion? She deserved that honest conversation years before it got here. But now I'm putting it to you. Is Diana a victim of Marcus's silence, or is she equally responsible for staying in a marriage she knew was hollow? The comments are your courtroom. Make your case. The house was quiet when Marcus arrived home at 6:53. Not the comfortable quiet of a Tuesday evening, but the prepared quiet of a space that had been arranged for a specific purpose. Diana had turned off the television, set 2 glasses of water on the coffee table instead of one bowl, which told him immediately that she wanted full clarity for whatever was coming, and lit none of the ambient lamps they usually kept on. So the living room ran on the last of the natural light, coming through the tall west-facing windows, everything, the color of something ending. She was sitting on the couch when he came in. Not curled into it the way she sometimes was on weekends, but upright, hands folded in her lap, her platinum hair still immaculate at 7 in the evening. Because Diana's armor never fully came off inside this house. He had stopped noticing that years ago. He noticed it now. He set his jacket over the chair by the door, sat down across from her the coffee table with its 2 glasses of water between them, like a small, careful boarder. How long, she said. Not how long have you known, or how long has it been going on. Just how long, open enough to mean everything, specific enough that he understood. She already knew the shape of it. Which part, he said. He wasn't being evasive. He genuinely needed to know which thread she was pulling. All of it, she said. But start with the part you think I don't know. Marcus looked at his wife. 8 years. They had met at a fundraiser. His mother had organized 2 people from adjacent worlds, who fit together with the specific ease of things designed to fit, complementary aesthetics, compatible ambitions, the same fluency in the language of rooms where appearance mattered. He had cared for her. He wanted to be precise about that, even now, even inside his own head. He had genuinely cared for her. What they had built together had been real. Even if what it was had shifted so gradually, neither of them had marked the moment it became something else. "I got a diagnosis 3 weeks ago," he said. "From Clement, I have a condition, a zoospermia. It means I can't father children. According to the initial results, it's permanent." Diana absorbed this without moving. Her hands stayed folded. Something moved through her eyes, complex, layered, not what he expected, not shock. "Initial results," she said. "Clement's office called today. They need to revise. The repeat panel came back differently." He paused. "I don't have the full picture yet. I'm calling him tomorrow." She nodded slowly. The light through the windows was going amber now, the last of it. "Is that why you've been the way you've been? These past weeks? Part of it, and the other part?" He held her gaze. "Diana." Say it, Marcus." Her voice didn't shake. He had always respected that about her, the structural integrity she maintained, even when the building was compromised. "We have been not saying things in this house for so long. I have forgotten what our actual voices sound like. So, say it." "There's someone," he said. It hasn't been a pattern. It isn't what you might think in terms of, is it serious?" The word serious sat between them. He thought about a quiet street and a key pendant and go. "I know. Go." He thought about 9 weeks, and the quarterly projections, and the particular way she rebuilt financial models from the inside out. And the Thursday, the city went dark, and all the weeks since, in which he had understood, with increasing and inconvenient clarity, that what had happened between them was not something he could file away. "Yes," he said. Diana closed her eyes for 3 seconds, opened them. The ice blue was still there, still sharp, but underneath it, something had loosened, not broken, loosened. The way a knot releases when you finally stop pulling against it and simply let it go. "She's at the company," Diana said. It wasn't a question. He didn't ask how she knew. Diana had always been observant in the way of people who have learned that information is the only reliable currency. "Yes." "The one who did the Henderson restructuring?" "Yes." A long silence. The amber light moved across the floor, between them. Diana reached out and picked up her glass of water and held it without drinking, looking at something in the middle distance that wasn't in the room. "I have to tell you something," she said. "And I need you to understand that I am not telling you this as a weapon. I'm telling you because we are apparently finally telling each other true things, and I don't want to walk out of this house still holding it." He waited. "I have been unhappy," she said, "for 4 years." She said it simply, like a measurement. "Not because of you, specifically, and not because of anything you did specifically. I have been unhappy in a way that lives underneath everything, underneath the dinners, and the events, and the board meetings, and the decisions about furniture, and the weekends at your mother's, and all of it. I have been going through every single motion of a life I chose, and feeling almost none of it." She set the glass down. "I stayed, because leaving felt like failure, and because I didn't know what I would be without this. A gesture, the house, the marriage, the whole constructed thing. I have been so afraid of not knowing that I made not knowing into a home and lived in it." Marcus listened. He thought about his own version of the same architecture, the careful management, the controlled distances, the way he had mistaken stability for contentment for so long, that contentment had quietly packed and left without us noticing. "I'm not angry," Diana said. "I want you to know that. I thought I would be. I've been preparing for anger for weeks, because I've suspected for months, if I'm honest, and I chose not to look because looking would require me to do something and I wasn't ready." She looked at him directly. "I'm not angry. I'm tired. I have been tired for 4 years and I would very much like to stop, Diana. I want to separate," she said, quietly, completely, like a woman who has been holding a door shut for a very long time and has finally simply stepped aside. "I want to do it properly, without destruction, because I don't want to destroy you, and I don't want you to destroy me, and whatever we were to each other was real. even if it's over. But I want to separate. I want to find out what I am when I'm not performing being this. Another gesture at herself. The hair, the posture, the pearls. I think I might be someone quite different. I'd like to find out. The room was nearly dark now. Marcus leaned forward and turned on the lamp on the side table. A small adjustment, practical, giving them both something to see each other by. I think you might be too, he said. Someone quite different. She looked at him. For a moment, stripped of the performance, he could see her, just Diana, 36 years old, sitting in a house she'd been hiding in, asking to leave. He felt something for her that was clear and uncomplicated, for the first time in years. Not romantic love. They had traveled a long way past the territory where that lived. Something more like the feeling you have for someone you went through, something real with. Recognition. Care without possession. Okay, he said. She blinked. Okay. We'll do it properly. No destruction. He meant it. He felt the truth of it settle in his chest, solid and calm. You deserve to find out who you are. Diana looked at him for a long moment. Then she did something he hadn't seen her do in years. She laughed, very softly, just a breath of it, surprised out of her. 8 years, she said. And that's the most honest conversation we've ever had. Yes, he said. What a waste, she said, but without bitterness, more like wonder. They sat in the lamplight for a while, longer not with the weight of before, but with the particular lightness of two people who have set something heavy down and are noticing, with some amazement, that their hands are free. Marcus called Clement at 8 the following morning. He stood at the window of his home office. Diana had slept in the guest room, not with hostility, but with the simple practicality of a new arrangement beginning, and listened to Clement's voice. Deliver information that rearranged itself against everything he thought he knew. The initial sample was compromised, Clement said. It's not common, but it occurs. Contamination during processing, a specific enzyme interaction that produced a false result. The repeat panel tells a significantly different story. A pause. Marcus, your count is low. Below average, and I want to be transparent about that. There are implications worth discussing, but azoospermia was a misdiagnosis. You are not sterile. Fertility is reduced but present. With the right circumstances, conception is entirely possible. Marcus stood at the window. The city below was doing its morning thing. Movement, light, the ordinary machinery of a day beginning. He pressed one hand flat against the glass. Cold, real. Are you certain? He said. I ran it twice, Clement said. I'm certain, he ended the call. Stood with his phone in his hand, and the glass cold under the other palm, and the city moving below him, and something moving through his chest, and something moving through his chest that was too large and too fast to name all at once. Relief and terror, and the specific vertigo of a man who has been standing on ground he believed was solid, and has just been told. The ground was always there, he simply couldn't see it. 9 weeks. His phone was already in his hand. He typed. Clement called. The diagnosis was wrong. I need to see you. Not the office. Can you meet me this morning? 3 minutes passed. He watched the screen. The park on Aldrin Street. 1 hour. She was sitting on a bench near the east entrance. When he arrived, her dark hair down, he had never seen it down in daylight, only in the private geography of that Thursday, and the handful of times since that he kept returning to without meaning to. She was wearing a soft pale-colored jacket over dark trousers, her hands around a coffee cup, watching a dog investigate a tree with the focused attention of someone whose mind is somewhere else entirely. He sat down beside her. She looked at him, read his face, the way she read everything, quickly, precisely, the information organizing itself behind her eyes before she spoke. Tell me, she said. The diagnosis was wrong. He said it plainly, because plainness was the only register available to him this morning. Contaminated sample. The real results are low but not absent. Clement confirmed it twice. Serena looked at him for a long moment. He watched the information move through her, not the performed composure of the office, but the real version, the one he'd seen only in private, where her face was honest. Her eyes went bright suddenly, and she looked away fast, toward the dog and the tree and the ordinary morning, and pressed her lips together for a moment. When she looked back, she was steady. "So it's yours," she said. "It's mine," he said. The words sat between them on the bench in the morning light, simple and enormous. Marcus. Her voice was careful, precise, the voice she used when she was protecting herself from hoping too much. "I need you to understand something. Whatever this is between us, whatever you decide about your life, about Diana, about all of it, I am going to be all right. I need you to know that before you say anything else. I'm not telling you this to trap you into anything. I'm telling you because it's true, and you deserve to know it, and because," she stopped, steadied, "because I don't want you to make any decision out of obligation. Not to me, not ever." He looked at her. This woman who rebuilt broken things from the inside out and kept a key on a chain, for reasons she'd never explained, and stood in corridors with her hand on door handles, making decisions in real time, and had somehow, without either of them planning it, become the person whose absence from a room he noticed before he noticed anything else. "I'm not making any decision out of obligation," he said. "Then, what are you making it out of?" He reached out slowly, giving her time to decide. His hand covered hers where it rested on the bench between them, the coffee cup warm on her other side, the morning moving around them. "Diana and I are separating," he said. "Last night, her choice as much as mine, properly, without destruction. She was clear about that, and so was I." He felt her hand shift slightly under his, not pulling away, adjusting. The way a person adjusts when they're letting something in. "This isn't me leaving something for you. I want to be precise about that. I'm leaving something that was already over, because it was over, and because pretending otherwise was making us both into smaller versions of ourselves." He paused. "But there is a conversation I've been not having with myself for months about you specifically, and I'd like to stop not having it." Serena looked at their hands on the bench. "You are terrifying," she said, but her voice had gone soft at the edges in a way it almost never did. "You routinely reconstruct failing financial models in under 12 minutes, he said. "You are not frightened of me. I'm not frightened of you." She turned her hand over, under his a small, deliberate motion, fingers adjusting. "I'm frightened of needing you. Those are very different things." "I know," he said. "I'm frightened of the same thing. I've been managing that fear for 8 years by not needing anyone. And it turns out the strategy has significant design flaws." She laughed, a real one, sudden and unguarded. The laugh he'd heard exactly twice, and both times felt like finding a door he hadn't known was there. She looked at him with those asymmetrical honey-green eyes, and the morning light on her face, and her hair down, and her hand turned over in his. "I have a lot of questions," she said, "about the logistics, about how this works, about your mother, who terrifies me considerably more than you do, about the company and the optics, and approximately 40 other things. I have been spreadsheet listing in my head for 2 weeks. We can go through all 40. Not right now," she said. "Right now I just need." She stopped, looked at their hands. "Right now I just need this to be real for a minute before I start organizing it." He tightened his hand around hers gently. "It's real." She nodded, looked at the park, the morning the dog still investigating the tree with undiminished commitment, took a breath that went all the way down. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay." Diana exited with her dignity, and her pearls completely intact. The laboratory casually destroyed. Everyone's reality with a contaminated sample. Like it was nothing. And now, Marcus and Serena are holding hands on a park bench in the morning light, like the protagonists of a film neither of them auditioned for. Except she is 9 weeks pregnant, and his mother Ruth Hale still knows absolutely nothing about any of this. My opinion? This was the most quietly beautiful chapter of the whole story. But here's what I need from you. Do you think Marcus waited too long to be honest with Diana, with Serena, and most importantly with himself? Or do you understand why he needed that much time? I want your real answer in the comments. The thing about Ruth Hale was that she noticed everything and said almost nothing until the moment she decided to say everything at once. Marcus had learned this at 7 years old, when she sat him down after a piano recital. He deliberately sabotaged and explained, with surgical precision, exactly how transparent his rebellion had been and exactly how little it had accomplished. He was 38 now, and the principal still held. She was waiting in his office. When he arrived on Monday morning, sitting in the chair across from his desk, with her hands folded and her silver hair immaculate, and her sharp eyes behind thin-framed glasses, doing what they always did, cataloging, calculating, arriving at conclusions he hadn't yet spoken aloud. "Mother," he said, not surprised, never surprised with Ruth. "Sit down, Marcus." He sat. The early light through the office windows was cold and clear, the kind of April morning that felt like a warning. "Diana called me yesterday," Ruth said. She was remarkably composed for a woman whose marriage just ended. "I respect that about her, I always have." A pause. "She told me the separation was mutual, that you both handled it with unusual grace. I told her I was sorry to hear it, and that I hoped she found what she was looking for." Ruth's gaze sharpened. "Then I asked her if there was someone else, and she said yes. But that it wasn't the reason, and I believed her because Diana doesn't waste energy on lies that small." Marcus said nothing. There was nothing to say yet. Ruth was building towards something, and interrupting her mid-construction was inadvisable. "Then I did what I always do when information arrives incomplete," Ruth continued. "I looked at the variables. You've been distracted for months, focused, but distracted. There's a difference. You've been in early and staying late, but your attention has been divided in a way I associate with men who are managing two competing priorities." She leaned forward slightly. "And there is a woman on the 4th floor who is exceptionally intelligent and who worked very closely with you on Henderson, and who has been exhibiting the particular kind of competence people exhibit when they're holding something significant together under pressure." He should have known. Of course she had noticed. Ruth Hale had built an empire by noticing things other people assumed were invisible. "Her name is Serena Vale," Marcus said. "Because if they were doing this, they were doing it with precision. She's head of strategy. She's brilliant. And yes." "And the baby?" The air in the office went very still. Marcus looked at his mother. She looked back with the absolute calm of someone who had done the math weeks ago and had simply been waiting for confirmation. "How did you?" "I have worked with pregnant women for 40 years, Marcus. I know what 9 weeks looks like on someone who is trying very hard not to show it." Ruth's expression didn't shift. Does she want to keep working? It was such a Ruth question. Not "what are you going to do?" or "have you lost your mind?" but does she want to keep working? That Marcus felt something in his chest unlock slightly. "Yes," he said. "She's very clear about that." Good. We'll need to restructure her reporting line so it doesn't run through you directly. Optics matter. And I won't have HR turning this into a case study." She said it, like she was organizing a board meeting. "I assume you've thought about how this looks." "I've thought about almost nothing else. And I'm not managing it for appearances," Marcus said. Something in his voice came out harder than he intended. Not defensive, but final. "I spent 8 years managing a marriage for appearances, and it made both of us miserable. I'm not doing that again. Not with her. Not with this." Ruth studied him for a long moment. He couldn't read her expression. Not disapproval, not approval. Something more complex than either. "You're in love with her," Ruth said. Not a question. Marcus looked at his mother. Thought about a quiet street and a park bench and fingers adjusting under his hand. "And I'm frightened of needing you." Thought about the way Serena rebuilt broken things, and the particular quality of her attention, and the fact that he had spent 4 months trying to categorize what she was to him, and every category had failed because what she was didn't fit into the architecture he'd been using to organize his life. "Yes," he said. Ruth nodded once, stood, smoothed her burgundy dress with both hands, in a gesture he recognized from childhood. The thing she did when a decision had been made, and the conversation was over. "Bring her to dinner," Ruth said. "Next Sunday, 6 o'clock. I want to meet the woman who managed to dismantle my son's perfectly controlled life in under 6 months." She walked to the door, paused with her hand on the handle. "And Marcus, I mean this, if she makes you happy, genuinely happy in a way I have not seen you be in years, then I don't care about the optics. I care that you're finally living something real." She left. Marcus sat alone in his office and felt something He hadn't felt in longer than he could accurately measure. Not relief, bigger than relief. The specific lightness that comes from discovering that the disaster you'd been bracing for was never actually coming. He picked up his phone. Typed, "My mother wants to meet you. Sunday dinner. I should warn you. She's terrifying, but she's on our side 3 minutes." Then, "I've been preparing for terrifying since I found out I was pregnant with the child of a man whose mother owns half this company. What time should I arrive?" He smiled, actually smiled. Alone in his office, with the morning light coming through, and the whole complicated future suddenly looking less like a problem to manage, and more like something he might actually want to live. 6 o'clock. I'll pick you up at 5:30. Wear whatever makes you feel like yourself. She values authenticity more than performance. That's a relief. Performance is exhausting. "I know, T," he typed, and meant it in ways that had nothing to do with dinner and everything to do with the last 8 years of his life, and the fact that he was finally carefully stepping out of them. The dinner happened on a Sunday that felt like spring, pretending to be summer, warm, optimistic, the kind of evening where the city looked almost generous. Marcus picked Serena up at 5:30. Exactly. She was wearing a forest green dress, simple and elegant, her dark hair down the key pendant at her throat, catching the light when she moved. She looked nervous in a way he'd never seen her look nervous, not the controlled performance nerves of a board presentation, but the real kind, the kind that meant she cared about the outcome. "She's not going to interrogate you," Marcus said as they drove. "She's absolutely going to interrogate me," Serena said. "I've read about her. She didn't build Hale Industries by being soft on people who want access to her son." "You don't want access to me. You already have it." She looked at him. Something shifted in her expression, softened, opened. "That's true," she said quietly. "I do." He reached over and took her hand, kept it for the rest of the drive. Ruth's house was exactly what Ruth's house would be. Elegant without being cold. Furnished with the kind of taste that required both money and conviction. She met them at the door herself, no staff, which Marcus recognized immediately as a deliberate choice. "This was personal, not professional, Serena," Ruth said, extending her hand. "I'm Ruth. Thank you for coming. Thank you for having me," Serena said. Her voice was steady. Marcus felt a brief flash of pride. She was holding her ground with the same precision she brought to everything else. They sat down to dinner in the West dining room. Ruth had prepared it herself. Another deliberate choice, Marcus noted. Roasted chicken, spring vegetables, nothing showy. The kind of meal that said, "I'm treating you like family, not a business acquisition." The conversation started carefully, Ruth asking about Serena's background, her education, her work. Serena answered with the same directness. Marcus had fallen, for no performance, just clarity. He watched his mother's expression shift, gradually from evaluative to genuinely interested. Then Ruth set down her wine glass and looked at Serena directly. "My son tells me you're 9 weeks pregnant," Ruth said, "and that you intend to keep working." "Yes," Serena said, no hesitation. "Good. I built this company while raising Marcus, and I will not have anyone suggest that motherhood and competence are mutually exclusive." Ruth's gaze was sharp, but not unkind. "What do you need from me to make that possible?" Serena blinked. It was the first time Marcus had seen her genuinely surprised. I hadn't thought about asking you for anything." "Then start thinking about it," Ruth said, "because if you're going to be part of this family, and I use that term deliberately, then you need to understand that we solve problems. We don't pretend they don't exist." She looked between them. "Marcus has spent too much of his life pretending. I won't watch him do it again. And I won't watch you exhaust yourself trying to prove you can manage everything alone." Serena's eyes went bright for a moment. She looked down at her plate, composed herself, looked back up. "Thank you," she said. And Marcus heard in those 2 words everything she wasn't saying, the relief, the fear. The careful hope of a woman who had been preparing to do this entirely on her own, and had just been told she didn't have to. The rest of the dinner passed in something that felt remarkably like ease. Ruth told stories about the early years of Hale Industries. Serena asked sharp questions that made Ruth laugh. Actually laugh, the rare unguarded kind. Marcus sat between them and felt the future. He'd been afraid of rearrange itself into something he might actually recognize as his own life. When they left, Ruth hugged Serena at the door. Brief, deliberate, real. "Take care of my son," Ruth said quietly. "And let him take care of you. He's better at it than he thinks." In the car on the way back, Serena was quiet for several blocks. Then she turned to Marcus with an expression he couldn't fully read. "Your mother is extraordinary," she said. "I know. I was terrified of her. I know. I'm not anymore." He smiled, reached over, and took her hand again. "Good." They drove through the city as the light faded, and the evening settled in, and for the first time in months, maybe years, Marcus Hale felt like he was driving towards something instead of away from it. 2 months later, Serena stood in Marcus's apartment. Their apartment now, the move-in still in progress, boxes stacked in the corners with her methodical labeling system, holding a small gray onesie that Priya had sent with a note that said, "For the tiny financial genius." Marcus came up behind her, wrapped his arms carefully around her waist, his hands settling over the place where their child was growing, with a tenderness that still surprised her every time. "What are you thinking?" he asked. She leaned back into him, looked at the onesie, looked at the boxes, looked at the life they were building in real time, messy and uncertain, and nothing like the controlled architecture either of them had planned. "I'm thinking," she said slowly, "that I have never been this terrified or this happy at the same time, and I don't know what to do with that information." He turned her around gently, looked at her with those dark eyes that had learned slowly to let her see what was behind them. "You don't have to do anything with it," he said. "You just have to let it be true." She looked at him. This man who had rebuilt his entire life, because the old one wasn't real. This man who touched her, like she was something precious, and fought with her about financial models and made her coffee exactly the way she liked it, without her ever having to ask. "Okay," she said, and kissed him in the middle of their half-unpacked living room, with the evening light coming through, and their whole, impossible future spreading out in front of them like something they might actually get to keep. Outside, the city moved on inside. Two people who had spent years being excellent at control finally stopped controlling and simply lived.